7 o'clock, Psycho sees Santa's workshop, and only Lee Majors can stop them. In the night the reindeer died. Be here.
Well, you can't show that commercial. That thing looked like the Manson family Christmas special.
Think I'm way off base?
Yes, you're a tad off base, sir.
Frank Cross is more than the youngest network president in television history.
Call security, have them change his locks, and toss him out of the building.
Oh, he's fired? It's Christmas.
Thank you. Call accounting. Stop his bonus. Oh, watch out.
Ah!
He's a thoughtful boss,
Thanks, boys. Get the nurse.
a generous brother,
What did he give you last year?
I don't remember. A shower curtain. Excuse me, ma'am. I think you dropped something here.
and a true humanitarian.
I can't get the antlers glued onto this little guy. We've tried crazy glue.
Have you tried Staples?
But his life is about to change.
That was a good one.
You are going to be visited by 3 ghosts tomorrow at noon.
God, tomorrow's bad for me, Lou. As a matter of fact, the whole rest of the week is a washout. Ow.
Hey everyone, it's Jonathan, and welcome back to the show for another episode looking at another Christmas Carol version, with another episode suggested by our co-host, today's being the 1988 film Scrooged, starring Bill Murray, brought to us by Nicki from Trivial Theater. I'd heard of this movie before, but I really had no idea what it was beyond a modern-day adaptation starring Bill Murray. But of course, I'm always down for another version of A Christmas Carol, so when Nicki suggested this one, I was totally in, and for this one, truly going in blind. I literally had no idea what I was in for, and this movie was like nothing I expected it to be. So, I feel like I have mixed feelings about this film.
I can see that. And it's definitely going back and watching it. Like, I remember watching this as a kid and just like the over the top elements of it, like, spoke to me so much. Rewatching it as an adult, and I have watched it a couple times, but it's been a couple years, and it definitely like the last probably 15 minutes, just they needed a different editor that wasn't like completely like into that zone, because that bit was just too much.
Yeah, it was. I hesitate to call it insane, but it felt.
Oh, it was insane.
Like you were
There's
going
no doubt.
crazy. I mean, the whole movie was kind of like that in certain ways, but.
Oh yeah, and the thing about this is, yeah, the thing that I realized, and I guess, I mean, I've watched a lot of like 80s movies, but this is a very distinctly 80s movie. You know, just the over the topness, the surreal nature of all of it, even though it's set in the quote unquote real world, it does have a lot of elements that go, okay, this is an 80s inspired thing.
Yeah.
Or actually, it isn't 80s inspired, it is 80s, but.
Yeah, I know what you mean. A lot of it, I couldn't tell whether it was being serious or whether it was being played for a joke. Especially, well, we can just get into the movie, especially this beginning scene, because I couldn't tell if he was like trying to be funny for all these TV execs or if he was like literally insane.
I think Frank Cross's character, I think, was. Are you talking about the like the promos at the open, or are you talking about the? I'm
talking about his reaction to the promos. Let's talk about the promos. At least the first one first,
right.
Because
I love the promos.
I love the Santa thing.
So good.
The movie opens like it's some sort of fantasy Santa film. There's like an elf choir or something singing cute Christmas music here at the North Pole, and then suddenly there's like gunfire and explosions. And then it's supposed to be a commercial for the $6 Million Man, which was a show around that time, and I think it was the actual person from the show.
Oh yeah, Lee Majors.
And it was so weird and hilarious that I actually want that to be a movie.
Oh, totally. And that's the thing with, you look at like the Grindhouse movies, or any of these things that have fake movie trailers or fake TV trailers in them. They sound like, they make them so intriguing, you want to see them real. Like, I would even be up for a Robert Goulet Christmas with a alligator following him.
Oh yeah.
But that first one, it was like like Terminator meets, Christmas essentially, but it was so like over the top and corny. It was awesome.
Yeah, when the things first started falling out of the sky, I was like, is this supposed to be an 80s remake of Santa Conquers the Martians? Because I'd be down for that too.
All of a sudden, like a really stupid boxy robot comes through the front door.
Yeah,
and then there was the Robert Goulet Cajun Christmas special, and then there was Father Loves Beaver.
And I think that was, I've never seen the show. It's Leave It to Beaver.
Leave It to Beaver. So the kid is nicknamed Beaver. I've never seen Leave It to Beaver, but it was like it very much plays on the SNL thing from that era.
Yeah. So I figured I knew what they were referencing, but the one that stood out to me was the Santa thing. I want the Santa thing to be real.
I guarantee you there's probably something like that out there someplace.
Probably.
But it's a matter of finding it.
But yeah, they're doing this whole TV lineup preview thing, and then all these execs are looking to Frank, who is the Scrooge character, expectantly. And then he's like, it's like he's practicing smiling into a mirror in a drawer, which I didn't understand.
He's trying to be like, because he wears such a veneer of like I need to make them believe me. Like it's a weird kind of thing because it is very much of that era, like, because it is set, so it's set in like a big network TV station thing. And he's like a slimy like head producer guy, but he's trying to be like, hey, you know what, these things are trash, but let me show you something that's gonna rock or whatever.
And he didn't even do a good job at that.
No, and that over the top stuff was definitely I don't know, I think that the explosions that were coming out of the opening Santa thing with Lee Majors would have been ideal for what they were looking for.
Totally. That looked amazing. I would still watch that.
Absolutely so.
But then he asks to see the Scrooge promo, and this is another thing that I want to be real. Because this whole thing is supposed to be live, and they say something like live via satellite, all these places, and then including the Great Barrier Reef for some reason. But this Scrooge special stars Buddy Hackett as Scrooge.
And Mary Lou Retton as Tiny Tim.
Which I didn't get at first, so I paused the movie and looked her up because I was like, I know that name. Why do I know that name? And she's a gymnast. Yep. So I just started laughing. And then they explain it later in the movie why this is a terrible choice for Tiny Tim. But that was so weirdly hilarious that they would think casting a literal gymnast as a little boy with a broken leg. I guess he's crippled. Everything's crippled, wrong with Tiny Tim. They would cast this amazing gymnast, which was hilarious.
Well, around that time, and I'm not sure 100% when it came out, but there's a movie that came out called Gymkata, and it's a cult movie classic. But so there was a gymnast, a male gymnast that had just come off like winning however many gold medals, and they got him into this action movie because, the name recognition of, oh my God, this gymnast of the moment. Dude could not act to save his life. And they built like gymnast props into the scene. So there's a scene where it's essentially, I think it's supposed to be like the back side of like the wall outside of a well, but it's essentially a pommel horse. So he's sitting there like kicking everybody around him on this pommel horse, essentially.
That sounds horrible, and I kind of want to see it.
You're coming over to the dark side. I'm very excited about that. It's definitely a movie to check out because it's so sincere and like he's so sincere. The movie itself, I don't know so much about, but that part, he's there to do his thing. He's there to be a gymnast, / whatever else, and it's hilarious.
Another thing that I found hilarious was their catchphrase in the commercial for this special. They said, "Scrooge, it will touch your every heartstring." I'm like, what? I don't want my every heartstring touched.
Well, why not? What do you have against your heartstrings getting some extra touching?
It just is the most off-putting way of putting what they were trying to say.
But that goes to show you kind of like the way that they marketed stuff in the 80s. Like, oh, well, people, we want to touch someone's heartstring. Let's touch all of their heartstrings. Forget just the one. Let's touch all of them.
Yeah. And then, of course, you'll love it.
Yep.
You will, Y-U-L-E, which is a terrible pun, and they kept saying it over and over and over.
Like any good station at the time did. And I will say, for whatever this movie is, and you hear more stories about like broadcasting cable channels in that era, like, kind of the corporate aspect of them. But I do think that I'm assuming that this was at least some of the intent was to show off that nature of a big broadcast station. Mm-hmm. Because there were a lot of, things that, you always hear talked about in that respect.
Mm-hmm. I liked his reaction afterwards, where it looks like he's being all warm and genuine, and he's like, "Oh my gosh, does that suck?" I just burst out laughing.
And I don't know how to looking at what Bill Murray has done, and I know that this movie is kind of one of those things, like it's not the greatest movie in the world, but I do think he was perfect for this role. Like you could look at this and you can look at like his role in Ghostbusters, and there's a lot of that same kind of like, okay, there's some good in him, but he's also kind of an asshole kind of a thing. Or that kind of like, he's got those elements of like, there's just a little sliminess to him. Mm-hmm. A little bit. I don't know. Maybe I'm overstating. He has a
lot of sliminess to him in this.
In this one, very much so.
Yeah. And this is the point where I'm confused as to whether he's like trying to be funny or if he's like genuinely insane, because he's like furious about how much they've spent on this special and this advertising that he hates, and he says, "Now I have to kill all of you." And for a minute I was wondering, is he actually going to murder these people? And then he looks up at this terrifying painting that looks like a Piccasso pig woman, and he says, "Mother, help me." And I'm like, what?
Actually, that painting is called Woman with an Artichoke.
It's real. They didn't make it for this movie.
Apparently not, according to
Is it a real Picasso?
Yeah. 4 copies of Pablo Picasso's 1942 painting Woman with an Artichoke were made for the scene. Wait a minute. Maybe I'm reading this wrong. I'm just reading this. 4 copies of Pablo Picasso's 1942 painting Woman with an Artichoke were made for a scene that was never shot.
Well, even if this is a copy, it's still funny that it was a real painting. I thought it was something that they painted for this movie.
Either way, it was. If it's that, then yeah, it was actually a Piccasso.
But that was one of the main things. It was like, is this guy trying to be funny or is he crazy?
I think he was probably a little bit of both, because he just given the kind of, he's probably like, "Oh, I wish I could kill you, but I'm going to make your life hell because you didn't give me what I want." Mm-hmm. Like he's I'm kidding, or I'm going to, like, when you say to someone, "I'm going to kill you." And yeah, my assumption is he's kidding, or it's an empty threat, but it's not an empty threat kind of a thing.
Yeah, I know what you mean. He's saying it because he wishes it could be true.
Exactly.
There's a different, I'm not sure what exactly his role is, but the character's name is Elliot Loudermilk.
Played by Bobcat Goldthwait.
Yes. I didn't recognize him at first because his voice didn't get to the Bobcat Goldthwait that I recognize until the end of the movie.
Where he goes, where he brings out his inner Bobcat Goldthwait.
Yeah. So I didn't recognize him at the beginning.
Yeah, it was weird to see him look like an accountant.
Like a human being.
Yeah.
He had a suit, glasses. He just looked like a normal guy.
Yeah. He looked like Rick Moranis, actually.
Oh, he did kind of, yeah. He probably would have been good in this part too.
I don't know. Well, in that part, yeah.
At the end, Bobcat Goldthwait was perfect. So maybe not. Anyway, he's talking about how they've been running the spot for a month and people are really excited about watching the special. But Frank is like, that's not enough. People have to be terrified that they're going to miss it. And then he flicks the guy's ear and while he's yelling at him. And there's another guy who's like laughing out loud at that for some reason, which I didn't understand.
Because studio execs.
The other guy's like never seen again, or maybe he's in the background, but he's not a main character at all.
No. He's basically a yes man, I think, more than anything else. Like a, unfeeling, like supposed to show off that unfeeling kind of nature.
Yeah. Okay.
That's what I'm assuming.
There's a couple of random things that I noticed in this scene too. They had Mr. Magoo's Christmas Carol playing on one of the screens in the background, which is another version that I've done with Rachel Wagner. And then, this is completely random, but I noticed a bottle of San Pellegrino on the table, and it looks exactly the same as the San Pellegrino you can buy today, so they have not updated their packaging at all.
Hey, classics don't change. I mean, Coca-Cola hasn't changed.
That's true. Yeah, that's true.
But still, that is an interesting thing to note and well worth noting.
Yeah, because so many brands get overhauled these days. It just was interesting that this bottle on the table from the 80s looks exactly the same as what you can get in the store today.
The question is the product inside the same?
I would hope so. I mean, it's just mineral water usually, unless it's like lemon flavored.
True. It's extra filtered now for more greater freshness than previously.
Maybe. Hashtag not sponsored by San Pellegrino.
Well, that's what I happen to be drinking right now. No, I'm kidding. But anyway.
I'm drinking Guava Sao Paulo LaCroix.
Ooh.
So LaCroix
nice.
could sponsor us too if they wanted.
Hey, that'd be good. I'm just drinking tap water, but I'm drinking it out of an A&W mug. So that would be cool. I wouldn't mind being sponsored by A&W.
Or Big Tap.
Yeah, I like it.
Anyways, Frank says that he has a different way of advertising the special, and he plays this incredibly random commercial showing shots of like terrorism, exploding planes, drugs, violence, and he's like really excited about this thing. He's like mouthing along with the words, and it ends saying that you don't want to miss Scrooge because your life might just depend on it. It's like, what does any of this have to do with Scrooge? Which I guess is the point, because they're asking him that. But like, how does he think that this is a good idea at all?
But I think again, it harkens back to that era. And you still see it today with a lot of network shows. There's that one thing that draws people in for the biggest reveal of the season. I mean, everything is superlative and has that level of, you cannot miss this. Now, obviously with streaming and those kinds of services, it makes a lot of that, moot.
Mm-hmm.
But back then, especially where something was live, I mean, it was, you miss this, everyone at the office is going to be talking about it and you're going to be completely out of the loop as to what's going on.
Mm. This just took it to the nth degree.
Oh, yeah. But again, that was, and again, I don't know how much this was aware of it. I think it would have to be sort of aware of it, but it is making quite a statement on TV and the nature of a lot of that stuff at that time.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, it was, and they come back to that that commercial and what it does over the course of the entire movie too. So
Yeah.
it is a thing that's set up and paid off
Yeah,
at least.
it is. So the main guy speaking out against this is that Elliot Loudermilk character, and so he ends up getting fired. And for some reason, up until now, I had seen his secretary here, but when he got fired, I just assumed that that meant that he was the Bob Cratchit character. I don't know why, but and then you keep seeing him later, and he's like getting drunk, and he's like on the streets. And I'm like, this is a really weird direction to take Bob Cratchit. But then I realized much later, oh wait, Grace is Bob Cratchit.
Yeah, they do some interesting little side things with his character, like Bill Murray. Frank Cross gets such glee
I did the
out
same
of
thing. I called him Bill Murray throughout my notes, and then I'd go back and change it.
No, that's 100% cool. I mean, I think as long as you know that this guy plays that character, but he just takes such delight in seeing the absolute desolation of someone's life. Because not only was Elliot Loudermilk fired, he was fired on Christmas Eve. And as he's going out to his car with this, or out to the street with this box of stuff, he's talking about, oh, my wife will understand. We'll just have to, go on one income. Like, he's trying to go through all of the things he's going to try and say and all this kind of stuff. And he just kind of goes down. He goes down hard and fast.
Mm-hmm. But through this, we get to know Grace a little bit more, and he sees a drawing hanging on her wall of something her kid drew, I think, of Santa and Mrs. Claus, and he's critiquing it because Mrs. Claus has 11 fingers, and he crumples up the kid's drawing. I'm like, they really want to play up how evil this guy is.
Oh, they totally do. They totally do. Like it's over the top, but it's again, I think it's very over the top, but in a very 80s way.
Mm-hmm.
Like there was nothing subtle. I mean, they don't just, tap you on the head with a mallet. You're hit over the head with a giant sledgehammer with every part of this movie.
Mm-hmm. I should probably say too, Grace is played by Alfre Woodard, who I really like.
Oh yeah, and she was probably the most grounded thing in this movie.
Yeah, by far, by far. So, the next scene is him putting together his Christmas list of what he's going to be buying for his colleagues and family members. Basically, his brother is his only family member. Yep. And his brother is the nephew Fred of this movie. So, basically, he's only buying either a towel or a VHS player.
And the towel has the logo of the broadcast company on it.
So it's a very cheap thing, probably some free promo giveaway. And the VHS player seemed like an odd gift, but I started thinking about it. I was like, I guess at the time that probably was a higher end thing. So that's probably a good gift. But it just seemed kind of weird. It was going back and forth between towel, VHS. And even Grace got the towel. So he played no favorites, even with someone who should have been a favorite.
You'd think so, for all that she does.
For all that she put up with.
Yeah, no doubt. I mean, if someone would have grabbed my kid's drawing and ripped it up, yeah, we would be having issues.
Yeah. And then his boss shows up.
Oh God, I love his boss so much.
His boss is kind of weird, but in a different way. He's like going on this tangent about scientists saying that dogs and cats are starting to watch TV, so they need to start creating programming for them so that in 20 years they'll have regular viewers from the nation's house pets or whatever. and I loved his reaction to this. He's like whispering to Grace, call the police.
Actually, fun fact, so one of the trivia things is as of 2015 there were several dog and cat specific channels on Roku.
I believe it. I've seen videos on YouTube that are specifically tailored to cats, but it's kind of interesting. Even though they're for cats, I kind of like them. And for a while, I was putting them on just as background noise because it's just like they've set up a camera by a bird feeder and you're just watching birds and you get bird noises and nature noises. And it's just kind of relaxing.
Hey, that's awesome.
And they play for hours. Like, they've set up this camera and it just records everything. So it's, yes, it's for cats, but anybody can enjoy them.
Oh, yeah.
But that's not what he had in mind, because he's talking about putting in cat-friendly content into television shows, like having a detective whose main weird quirk is that he plays with a piece of string, so that cats will be drawn to this program for some reason.
And then into the Scrooge, or into the Christmas Carol special, they were going to put a couple of dormice.
Yeah, because he was talking about, like, isn't there a dormouse in the story? I'm like, they're mixing up Alice in Wonderland with A Christmas Carol, which was kind of hilarious to me personally.
Oh, yeah. Well, then that gets brought up again later. Those poor dormouses.
Yeah,
Mice.
yeah.
Poor dormice.
Apparently, they need antlers for some reason. They're
well, you gotta get them all
gluing
festive.
them on their head, and
yeah,
and he's wanting to staple them onto the head. But yeah, it was odd, and I didn't understand it, but I liked it. So then his boss leaves, and somebody shows up, who I'm still not entirely sure who they were, but it's somebody that the boss. I don't know if the boss is intending to replace him with this guy, but this guy, I think, wants his job. And I'm not sure what the guy's name is because I just wrote him down as John Glover and then just kept calling him John Glover. And I forgot to go back and find out what his name was.
Yeah, he's kind of a, well, this guy is here to take the pressure off you, but Frank Cross sees him as a competition for the position.
Mm-hmm.
Which is probably how Frank Cross got into that position. So I would assume.
But yeah, he's like freaking out and he's demanding that Grace stay late to help him figure out who this guy is. And he says she's not allowed to take her son to the doctor because when he works late, she works late. And then he had this whole back and forth about who works late. And he says, and if I don't work late, I don't work late. And it was kind of hilarious. But it was another thing, like, Grace is putting up with way too much.
Oh, yeah.
But then I think in the end, they didn't work late because there was another scene later where she is getting off the train with her son and talking about paying $200 just for this guy to tell him that he doesn't talk. So I think she did actually take him to the doctor.
Oh, yeah. She told him to, go
pound sand.
Yeah, exactly. Because he had some kind of a humanitarian thing, like a humanitarian.
That was another thing I didn't understand. What did he do to earn this humanitarian award?
You know what? But the thing is, like, the way you treat people inwardly in your organization versus the outward, like image you put out there.
Yeah.
I think that's probably trying to show that part off. Now, obviously, Scrooge, didn't have that, but given the position, it's like, oh, well, I donate to charity, I do this, I do that. I'm sure that's probably what it was in relation to.
Yeah, probably. But it was kind of funny because, like, on the way to the humanitarian award, he tricks a lady into stopping long enough to steal her cab. Like an elderly lady.
Yep.
So she's left on the side of the road while he wins a Humanitarian of the Year award. And then he's, like, giving this touching speech about he gives so much that sometimes it hurts, and he has to tell himself to stop it. And then he flicks the ear of the... There's a lot of ear flicking in this movie, which is that like an 80s thing? It was weird.
It must be. I remember a couple of times that happening. I don't remember... I can't list it for you, but I remember as a kid, like, seeing a lot of that. Like, I think it happened in Goonies and a couple of others.
Yeah, it must have been like...
Just a thing of that era.
Probably like when people started getting, like, spanking is out. We can't show that anymore. Let's show ear flicking instead.
I'm just imagining, like, him taking Bobcat Goldthwait over his knee and just, like, spanking him. Just in the middle of the conference room, they just like grabs him, puts him over his knee, and starts going to town. It's like, that's not quite right.
Who knows? Maybe if they'd made this a decade or two earlier, they might have done something like that. But yeah, he gets this statue and he tells the crowd he's going to treasure it forever, and then he leaves it in the cab on the way home.
Yep. As you would expect.
And somewhere in here, his brother shows up. That's where I figured out his brother was supposed to be the nephew Fred of the story. And he's talking about, he assumes that Frank hates Christmas, but Frank insists that he loves it because it's cold and everyone's at home watching TV and ad revenue goes up.
Not untrue. Also, actually funny, that is actually Bill Murray's brother. Like all four of
really?
all three of his siblings that act show up in this movie.
Huh. Okay, I didn't know that. Who are the other ones?
The one plays his dad, Brian Doyle Murray, and the last one was let's see. John plays his on-screen brother. Joel plays one of the guests at John's party where they're playing Trivial Pursuit, or whatever they're playing, and Brian plays Bill's on-screen dad.
Huh. Okay. Interesting.
Yeah, I thought so too. The only one that I knew of was Brian Doyle Murray. Because you've seen him, he showed up in a lot of stuff back in the 80s.
I recognized him, but for some reason, the last name Murray didn't tip me off that it was a relation.
I think he's Brian. I think he goes by Brian Doyle more than he goes by Brian Doyle Murray.
Okay.
Because I don't remember seeing him as Brian Doyle Murray, but I do remember him as Brian Doyle, so.
So, after the whole awards ceremony, he gets back to his office to be visited by the first ghost, who is a zombie now.
Well, this is his Jacob Marley character.
Yes, not the ghosts of past, present, future. This is the first actual ghost of a dead person. It's his old boss, and they went the zombie route, like legit, really gross zombie.
They did a great job with it, honestly. I guess you're talking, late 80s, so that was kind of the height. Not that good practical effects didn't happen before then, but the makeup was on point. Especially when the hanging out of the window scene. That was
gross.
Oh yeah, it's dusty and nasty, and the the golf ball I love.
It was so weird because the golf ball scene, it was so awful, but the mouse was so cute.
Oh yeah.
The mouse living in his head. It was so cute, even though this is horrifying.
Yeah, so so I'm trying to think, his name was Lou, I think. Lou Hayward or something like that. Shows up right. And he was formerly Bill Murray's boss. And he's like, you're gonna be visited by three ghosts, and he goes to pour a drink and he's turned around and out of the back of his head there's a flap that rolls up and a golf ball comes out. And then a mouse comes out from behind the golf ball.
I wonder if he died by getting hit in the head with a golf ball.
It's possible.
Because otherwise, why would there be a golf ball in his head? With an actual golf ball sized hole.
I don't know, because it sounded like he died of a heart attack. He said he was on the back, or he was on whatever green, and then that was all he remembered. So yeah, but that makes sense
but he could have, maybe it's because he didn't see the golf ball coming. It was in the back of his head.
How did the mouse get there then?
Maybe
was the mouse riding the golf ball?
It just crawled in afterwards after he was buried.
You know what? It makes as much sense as having a golf ball stuck in the back of your head. We'll go with that.
Okay.
I'm gonna go with the idea that the mouse was riding the golf ball and it both landed in the back of his head.
I mean, there's so much other weird stuff in this movie that's totally plausible.
He also, Bill Murray shoots him a couple times because he's thinking that it was something, thinking it was a dream or whatever. And Lou goes to take a drink, and the classic Looney Tunes thing where every single bullet wound, you drink something and water sprays out, and yeah, that happens here. It's pretty funny.
I didn't even think of Looney Tunes. It reminded me, have you ever seen the movie The Last Unicorn?
It's been years, when I was a kid.
There are certain scenes from that movie that have just stuck with me all my life. And there's one of the skeleton who it really wants a drink, and he's like, it's almost like played for tragedy. Like he can't drink because he tries, and it's just like pouring through his bones. That's what it reminded me of, even though this is totally different.
No, but I think that, I mean, it's in that kind of morbid, like, oh, let's make fun of the fact that if you drink something, this is gonna happen. So, like, if I ever come back as a zombie, I kind of hope that happens.
That somebody shoots you full of holes so that you spring a leak.
Yes, so you can go out back and water the grass or whatever.
I mean, it would be a good way to transport water to plants.
Oh yeah, totally. But they'd have to be strategically placed.
Yes. I did like the ghost speech, though. It was like surprisingly good for what this movie is, about how mankind should have been his business. It felt like one of the most true to the book parts, the way he was talking about how bad he used to be.
I would agree. I think that they translated that very well. And there are, because it is an over the top, but it does have those touch points of not
Sincerity.
real sincerity. Yeah, thank you.
But yeah, even through this whole speech, Frank is making wisecracks and he's just not listening. And eventually the zombie ghost pushes him magically through the window and his arm breaks off, which was so gross because it was so well done.
Oh yeah, it was just so like just dusty and you like the subtle sound effects, and it was, I don't know, I thought it was pretty well done considering. And even how they transitioned from that to him waking up, or quote unquote waking up.
Yeah, it was interesting how they went between the ghost scenes and the real life scenes, and sometimes I wasn't sure which was real and which wasn't, which probably was the point.
I think so, yeah.
But yeah, he eventually wakes up and the phone is dialing itself, calling someone named Claire, because it ends up on her voicemail, and he leaves a frantic message telling her to call him anytime. And you also, some point in here, after Grace has been on the train with her son, I don't know if it's the same scene or different scene, they get home and her family, they're trimming the tree, which is her son. And they're all acting like it's hilarious, but he looks so sad.
Oh, he looks miserable. It's just, your heart breaks for him because he's such a cute little kiddo.
He's adorable. They literally found like the perfect, most adorable child for this.
Oh yeah. Yeah, and just the big puppy dog eyes, and I imagine them telling him, okay, just pretend that you didn't get candy. And I mean, just the look on his face, it was just, oh.
Yeah, it's one of those things with any version of A Christmas Carol. The Tiny Tim character, it can either be really well done or not the right child at all.
Yeah.
This one was really well done.
So him or Mary Lou Retton?
Him. She was on the opposite end of the spectrum. But that was on purpose.
But she can do backflips. She doesn't just throw down her walking stick or her walking crutches. She does a backflip. Yeah. So then I think it's the next day where he's now finding out that his horrifying ad has killed an old woman. And he's ecstatic about it.
Yes. He thinks it's amazing. You can't get publicity like this.
And you know what? As sad as it is, there would be execs now and then, and I'm sure any time in history.
They probably wouldn't say it as excitedly as he is, but inside they'd be thinking, yes.
Oh yeah, because there's no such thing as, like, it takes that classic line about there's no such thing as bad publicity.
Mm-hmm. And then he's going down to the set after this, and you get like, it's not, I don't think it's actually filming the special. I think it's probably just rehearsal.
Just yeah.
But it's more like with Buddy Hackett playing Scrooge, and I'm like, I want this to be an actual movie. He would have been such a weirdly hilarious Scrooge. This could be like the perfect parody.
That would have been awesome. Yeah, I think that what they were doing was it was their dress rehearsal because it was going on that night.
Oh, that's true. This did happen over like the course of a day.
Exactly.
It
Or
felt longer.
thereabouts.
It felt
Yeah.
longer.
Yeah, no, it definitely did. Well, because you're hitting all of those because with the original Christmas Carol, it happened over 3 nights, right?
Yeah.
As compared to like you go from one to the next to the next.
Yeah, they did kind of they played with time a little bit, of course, because you have some time travel, but I think they did do it all in one day because the first one came at noon, which is different because it usually comes at either midnight or 1 a.m.
Yeah.
But they had him come at noon, the first one, which caused a whole bunch of problems, which we'll get to that. But yeah, there's more in this scene too, though, because they have this whole thing that I think is supposed to be funny, but I didn't think it was that funny, with this network censor who is like, they like almost murder this woman.
Yeah, it's not.
And it felt like it's like somebody had a vendetta against the network censor and was like, wouldn't it be hilarious if we had a character who was a censor and we just like put her through every single horrible thing we can think of?
Yeah,
it was like Looney Tunes level violence against her.
Oh yeah, I mean they do everything short of tar and feathering the poor woman. Now, regarded again, I do think that it relates back to like some kind of a narrative about broadcast TV at that point, because they do get there are points that they do get a little weird, like, but that's neither here nor there. They definitely went all out for that part, and it was a very odd little side thing. And it was, had it not gone on as many times as it did, I don't think it would have been as bad, but it just didn't stop. It was just like
through the whole rest of the movie, she just kept having terrible things happen to her.
But then she got her happy ever after at the end, kinda.
But that was weird too. I mean, we'll get there, but that was also weird.
I'm not gonna disagree with you on that one.
But at one point, I thought that they literally killed her because like a whole thing just fell right on her, and I thought that she was dead. So
yeah,
I guess that's good. They didn't actually go out and kill her.
No, 100% agreed. Yeah,
it felt too mean-spirited.
Yeah, and there were moments of that kind of stuff in this movie, but none of it quite went as far as this.
Yeah.
And it didn't really add anything to the story, and it's like one of those little like side plot things that they throw in to be like, oh, we're making a statement about this, but no one is gonna like look at that and go, oh yeah, they make a point about TV censors.
Yeah, no. That's why I felt like it was some frustrated and or pervy executive who wanted to get away with things he wasn't allowed to get away with. So he decided to take it out on a fictional censor.
Oh, yeah.
So at some point in here, Claire shows up, the Claire that he called on the phone. She's complimenting how grown up he looks because he has so much shorter hair than he used to. And she seems really nice. She does not seem like somebody who would be involved with someone like Frank at all.
Oh, yeah, total, like 180 degree from what he is. And it's Karen Allen, so all the better.
What else has she been in? Because I know her from somewhere.
She was in Raiders of the Lost Ark. So she was Marion Ravenwood.
That's
what
probably
else is she?
Why I recognized her.
I
haven't seen that in years, but that's probably why I recognized her.
Yeah, that's the most recognizable thing I think you'd know her from.
Probably then. But yeah, she's like super nice. Seems to have no idea what kind of a person he is, even though with flashbacks she kind of does. So I don't know. She's like way too forgiving, if you ask me.
Well, and she hasn't seen him in 15 years. Like, she's like, you call me out of the blue after 15 years, so.
Yeah. But even then, even though he seems like he's trying to be nice around her, he turns around and there's more abuse to that censor and other people around. And she sees this happening, so.
She kind of knows what to expect from him. And maybe, like, again, there's a lot of stuff in this movie that happens because the plot demands that it happen more than anything else. Yeah. And that's not the greatest part of this. Like, yeah, the fact that she sticks around is weird, but it's not surprising given it's a movie.
Mm-hmm. And this is where the dormouse thing comes back, because there's a dormouse handler. I'm pretty sure that's not a dormouse. I think it's just a regular American field mouse. But he's like trying to figure out how to get antlers to stay on its head, and Frank is like, just staple them on. And Claire's horrified. And then he's like screaming at Grace's son for being on the set. And this is more stuff is like, why is Claire even thinking that this guy is worthy of her attention at all?
Who knows?
Just...
That's the thing about like, and not that, again, from a movie perspective, there's that candle of what might have been, and even when you see them, it's like, I still like him because of what's underneath all this weird stuff. And not that it should happen, but I'm sure that's probably what they were going for. Because she's like, give him a chance. But again, I mean, that's kind of plays into her character is a bit one note, like you say. She's way too forgiving. I mean, she works at a homeless shelter. There's all of these things that show her to be an incredibly kind person.
Yeah.
And you definitely get that. She sees the good in humanity, but she can't see past that, I guess, rose-colored glasses thing.
Yeah. So after all this, he ends up going to lunch with his boss. And this is where he meets John Glover. I don't remember his name. The guy from the elevator in the previous day. They are meeting for lunch at noon, and he suddenly remembers that that's when the ghost said that the first ghost was coming. So I think he thinks at first that he's the ghost.
Oh, he totally does, yeah.
And he's like freaking out. Like at this point, if everybody didn't think he was insane from the way he acted before he saw a ghost, they're definitely starting to think he's gone cuckoo for Cocoa Puffs at this point. Because he's like, he sees an eyeball in his drink. He thinks a baked Alaska is burning a man alive. And he's basically, he leaves. He's freaking out. He has to leave. He takes a cab, and then turns out the cab is driven by the ghost of Christmas Past. I think the cab driver is somebody famous that I don't know. He was like in a rock band or something.
Hang on, let me look it up quick here. Because I know you're right. It was supposed to be David Johnson, or Johansson. So he's been in a lot of stuff, but nothing that's like stands out. He was in Kick-Ass. He was in Let It Ride. He was in Coda. Well, it was a short from 2005. 200 Cigarettes. Oh, The Adventures of Pete and Pete from the 80s or 90s. It looks like he did a lot with music.
Yeah.
Okay. He started the New York Dolls,
which I've never heard of.
Me neither. So yeah, he's more of a musician than anything else.
Yeah.
Like he starred in a lot of stuff, but it was like guest roles. So like one episode here or there.
Yeah.
And there's nothing specific that stands out as like, oh, he did this or that. So
anyway, they end up in 1955 when Frank was 4. And I loved the scene where the ghost goes through the door and Frank tries and crashes into it.
And I will say, I know that the character himself probably isn't the most true to the character of the Ghost of Christmas Past.
No.
But I absolutely love the way that they do it, going back in time and using the cab aspect.
Yeah. It kind of reminded me of, there's another one, a more recent made-for-TV movie that I think I've talked about before that I watched with Rachel called A Diva's Christmas Carol.
Oh, yeah.
I think in that one, it was the Ghost of Christmas Present who was this aging rocker.
Oh, okay.
Instead of the Ghost of Christmas Past, if I remember right. It's been a while since I watched that one. But yeah, that one's good too. Anyway.
Nice.
1955. He sees himself as a child where he wanted a choo-choo train. But for some reason, his father thinks that a giant pack of veal is an acceptable Christmas present for a 4-year-old.
Well, he was a very, very practical butcher guy. I mean,
Okay.
And I can't so I will say this. For as much as I enjoy the cab going back and even the character to some extent, but the things that they show that lead him up to like where he ends up, it's kind of all over the map. Like it's one of those points that just doesn't, with Scrooge, it was one consistent path throughout everything that drove him to where he was.
Mm-hmm.
But you don't really get that with this. It's like,
No.
his, Christmas was played down when he was a kid. Okay, great. But then he gets the love of a lady and he's brought back, and then all of a sudden he's dragged back into this world, and the combination just doesn't add to where he's at.
Yeah.
It's kind of like Anakin Skywalker going from sweet kid to spoiled teen to, the destroyer of worlds.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it didn't feel natural enough.
No, absolutely didn't.
I did like some of the lines from various characters in here when he's going through the years, like his father ranting about why people can't work. My back hurts. My legs ache. I'm only 4.
And Brian Doyle does such a great job with like that kind of a role. Like just, he's so good at that.
And then later, it was, I keep wanting to call him Scrooge, and Frank himself. I've never liked a girl enough to give her 12 sharp knives. That one cracked me up too.
Even when he's trying to like say, oh well, veal is actually super expensive. It was actually a very practical gift.
Making excuses for his father.
Yeah, exactly. Or like they come up to the house and he's like, oh, I guess Dad didn't decorate the house yet for Christmas, and it's like, nah. So
it's Christmas Eve.
Exactly. Pretty sure he's not going to decorate by now.
But yeah, you've gone through the years. He has Claire as a girlfriend at some point. He meets her at a Christmas party, or no, he leaves a Christmas party and meets her outside of it. And then a year later, they're living together. And then a few more years later, you never saw anything that had them fall apart. You saw the beginning of their relationship and the end of the relationship. So it never felt like you got any good closure as to why they drifted apart, because at the end of their relationship, he's working on like the most obnoxious children's television show ever. He's like in this giant dog costume, and he's like making out with a person in a giant bone costume.
He's kind of like Barney, but set in set in probably the early 80s, I would assume. And I took
70s
it from,
or 80s. I forget the year exactly. I'm sure it's set on screen.
It's probably more like Banana Splits, like from that era. The one thing that
actually it might have been 68. I think it did say
okay,
68.
Okay, that would make sense given the era. I will say that like their falling apart thing was probably because he kept choosing work. Like you could see when he was at the Christmas party, he was the only guy still working when everybody else was into debauchery and such. And then they jump forward to where he's playing the dog. And that's such a weird sentence. They jump forward to playing the dog, and they're talking about how, oh, we're going over to such and so's place for Christmas. And he's like, I gotta do this and that. Like he takes up going to dinner with the boss to move his career forward as compared to spending time with his people. So
yeah. And then at some point it transitions from him seeing this in real life to watching it on TV, and he's suddenly back on set where the fictional Scrooge is happening, and then he's freaking out because they're working on the scene where Belle leaves Scrooge. So he's yelling at everybody because he's reminded of like his own similar scene, and he's talking about how nobody could be as nice as Claire was without having somebody to hide. So he's going to go find her at the charity that she works at. And you also get another scene in here where like he's going to the charity, but like you have Loudermilk throughout this whole movie, like in the background, like getting drunk, or in this case, he's given so much blood that he just collapses outside the blood drive thing because they're like paying robbed. So much a pint.
Yeah, exactly.
Oh yeah, somebody like comes up and is like patting him down and looking in his pockets. Yeah, he's anything that bad that could happen to him happens to him.
Yeah. It's basically worse than the poor censor. Just
I
not
was
in a
just going to
physical
say
way.
it is kind of similar to the treatment given to the censor, except I don't know why. I just found hers to be more mean spirited than his.
Oh, well, it is totally like there's a reason for his character. Like the way
Yeah.
things come back around for his character,
Yes,
it
definitely.
makes sense. The stuff that's done to the censor is just done to the censor. There's no
Yeah.
rhyme or reason. It's like Wile E. Coyote getting hit constantly with like,
Mhm.
an anvil or rock or whatever.
Yeah. So he makes his way to the shelter, and with all of his ranting and raving, because he doesn't stop ranting and raving,
He really doesn't. And that's why they bring him into the shelter, because they think he's
Yeah.
delusional.
they think he's some kind of homeless vagrant.
Despite his attire.
Yeah, really. And Claire, for some reason, is ready to forgive him right away. And he wants to take her out, but then there's there's like fuse problems and like turkey delivery problems, and she needs to go fix things because she's in charge. And he's yelling about how she needs to fire all these people, but they're actually volunteers. And it's like, I'm still questioning why she's even talking to this monster.
And you have every right to question it, because yeah, he's not exactly the nicest person. So there's a lot of stuff that happens throughout this that from a perspective of that moment probably made a ton of sense, but like in retrospect you look at it and kind of scratch your head. He starts doing Richard Burton impersonations to a bunch of to this group of homeless people that are sitting there.
Yeah, I didn't understand what was going on with the homeless people.
Okay, so that actual bit was based on a Saturday Night Live skit from 1977 where he imitated Richard Burton's like dramatic scenes. But it's such a little East, like it's such a like a niche thing to know. There's another line earlier when he's in the restaurant and he thinks the guy catches fire and then he like pours the water all over the guy. There was a thing about, because he says, "Oh, I thought you were Richard Pryor." There was something that happened with Richard Pryor where he ended up like catching himself on fire and running down the street, and someone hosed him down to put him out. Like it's such a weird, like there's because a lot of
that's a very specific reference that it seems like, why would you put that in a movie that's going to be watched probably many, many, many more times than SNL in the 80s?
I have no idea. But a lot of Bill Murray's stuff was ad-libbed. So that's probably,
okay.
that could have been the best take that they came with. I'm honestly not sure.
I'm sure it probably was hilarious at the time. I just, not understanding what they're talking about, I didn't get it.
Yeah. Well, and again, I think that's kind of a thing of 80s movies. There's so much, and not that, I mean, you look at Marvel movies and all of the back and forth that happens between the connected movies and stuff. But you take that and put it in the 80s with this one movie, and that's probably what you get, kind of a similar feel. Like there's probably a reason that they went with, Robert Goulet's, old Cajun style Christmas, or, Lee Majors, defending Santa against, unknown threats.
Yeah, because, well, even the Santa thing, I guess that is a very specific reference, but it's still done in such a way that it's hilarious and semi-timeless enough so that I want this to be an actual movie. Even though I've never seen The $60 Million Man or know who this guy is, I still like the idea of this.
I agree. I think it'd be hilarious. Like, can you imagine Vin Diesel in that role now? It's about family, Santa. We don't leave anyone behind. He shoots off a rocket launcher and then they take off.
And Santa is played by The Rock.
That would be a way to have them both on camera again, being that neither one of them really want to work with each other.
Oh no.
Oh god, we totally need to make this happen just for that. Oh my god.
I can't believe nothing like that has happened.
Yeah.
The Rock would be a great Santa.
Oh, he'd be tremendous.
I bet someday he will be.
I would, considering everything he does, I would not be surprised.
He's been the Tooth Fairy, so he can be Santa.
Oh man. One other thing to note when he's with the homeless people, like they do come, well, one of them specifically does come back around later on. So
Yeah, but I wasn't sure if he was important. Like, it seemed like maybe he
not,
recognized him, but was it because he recognized him from the homeless shelter, or was it because he knew him prior to that?
no,
Because I
I'm pretty
wasn't sure how
sure.
familiar he was with these people he was talking to. That was another
I
thing that confused me about the whole scene.
I'm pretty sure that it was literally just like they're just homeless people that were like that he got sat down next to, and they're like, do Richard Burton, and then he starts doing that. So he forms that kind of like, it's supposed to be him forming a bond with these people,
Okay.
because he was able to make them laugh, and being that was, he did have a gift for making people laugh that was around to some extent with Claire and other people
Mm-hmm.
when he wasn't being,
A
real
jerk.
slimy. Yeah, exactly.
Okay. That makes sense. There's another scene here, too, where after he's down at the homeless shelter, he heads back and he walks in on a scene where the John Glover character is trying to explain to Buddy Hackett that he needs to call all the raggedy street children street urchins, not sea urchins. That just cracked
Oh,
me
that
up.
was good.
I love that. But that was the end of, I don't know, the end of the day or the end of that. I don't know. The lights all go out essentially, so he's left alone. And suddenly there's this fairy there who is the ghost of Christmas Present, which I thought was kind of interesting because it's kind of the opposite of the way a lot of versions do the Ghost of Christmas Present, because usually they make the Ghost of Christmas Past sort of ethereal and fairy-like, because in the book they're likened to a candle flame, so that's why the Ghost of Christmas Past is usually kind of like a fairy. But they have the fairy version be the Ghost of Christmas Present, and I'm not sure if she grows or if she's always human size, because I thought she was tiny at the beginning, but then she's the same size as him later on. Not that it matters anyway, but I just thought that was interesting.
I kind of love Carol Kane in this role. She's so just she's so,
I loved her.
oh my god, and the bubbles at the start, it's like so sugary sweet, and all of a sudden she kicks him in the face.
Well, she kicks him in the crotch and then punches him in the face.
Oh, right, sorry.
She punches him in the face a lot.
Yeah, and when
she's so violent, and it's hilarious.
well, and the poor thing, like she didn't so she grabs his lip. She actually tore it so badly the filming had to be halted.
Oh.
And also she felt really, really bad about like beating him up.
I could see that, but I did kind of love it because he had it coming.
Oh, he totally
he needed
did.
somebody to put him in his place.
Oh yeah, I would
Somebody
100% agree.
And it's not like you can beat up a fairy back, so he just had to take it.
The wings too, my god, they were so goofy. It's like they were
like
so
plastic,
DIY.
crinkly cellophane.
Yeah, 100%. And the way she gets him from place to place is she basically knocks him out, and then he wakes up in whatever scene.
Yeah, I love that.
It's gloriously violent, but in the greatest of ways. Like it's the exact opposite of
like super violent, but so cute at the same time.
Oh yeah, absolutely, and that totally matches who she is. Like she's got this little tiny like sweet voice, and all of a sudden she just
sucker punches
clocks him. Yeah. Oh, awesome. Anyway, continue.
Yeah, so she sucker punches him, and they end up at Grace's house watching Grace and her family, and he's wondering what's wrong with her son. And this is where you get the explanation that her son has not spoken for 5 years ever since he saw his father killed. And Frank is like, oh, I didn't know her husband was dead. And she was like, she wore black for a year. Well, I just thought it was a fashion thing.
I mean, and he is definitely that kind of spacey to not, or that unaware to it if that was ad-lib, that was a great line. I mean, it was goofy as hell, but it fit his persona very well.
Yeah, definitely. And then you get more ear flicking in this scene, like a lot more, because she's talking about how poor they are and like it's his fault because obviously it's his fault. And
Right.
he says he'll check his records so that maybe she's due for a raise. And then she's just like flicking his ear, and then it's like there's electrical buzzing sounds as like she's zapping him until he finally submits. He's like, yeah, she'll get a raise or something like that. Eventually, she says it's time to move on to the next place. She punches him in the face, and he ends up falling down a flight of stairs where there's a dog that can see him, not any people. And they're at his brother's house. And I think it's his wife, and I'm pretty sure it's Wendy Malick playing his wife. And he doesn't want to go in because he says it looks like a beer commercial. And this is another line that I loved. She grabs his tie, the fairy grabs his tie, and says, "Don't vex me, Frank, or I'll fix your mouth so it won't hold soup."
Oh, she's so good. So good.
Oh, I loved her. And we're like just in time for him to open his present from his brother, which from the scene at the beginning of the movie, is supposed to be a towel, but this is a huge box. And Frank is like, that doesn't look like a towel. And it's actually a VCR. And he's talking about
As
now
it should be.
his ex-secretary mixing up the gifts, but then he eventually relents and says, no, he can keep the VCR.
And that there's actually a great line that comes back around to the VCR at the end of the show or the end of the movie as well. So,
and after this party, the fairy tells him it's time to go, and he doesn't want to go. So she takes a toaster and smashes him in the face with it.
Again, I have no remorse for her doing that.
No, yeah, he winds up in a sewer, and this part kind of confused me too, because he yells, "Where am I, Trump Tower?" And the place is like awful looking, and I guess I thought that like back in the day, Trump Tower was like a good thing, but maybe it wasn't. Maybe it's always been not seen as a nice place.
I think that to some extent, like Trump has always had that stigma about him.
Well, I guess I knew that people of New York didn't like him because he would. I don't know if he would use eminent domain, but I know he bought out a ton of people that he like took over a lot of things. So maybe it was just a dig at him for that.
Oh, I'm sure. I think that's probably. I think that he's always had some of that stigma about him. Like, yeah. And being that you've got a lot of New York folks, that would probably make sense.
Yeah. I guess in my head, pre-presidency, his towers were known for being opulent. So when he wound up in a sewer and yelled, "Where am I, Trump Tower?" that was kind of confusing.
Maybe the cold, because it was when he was in, like, maybe the cold aspect, or it could have just been the fact that it was a sewer aspect. I'm not sure, but it could just be like it was a cold, like, like emotionally cold place to work. I'm not sure, but yeah, I think
it could be.
It probably was that combination. Like, there are those people that always have that sense about them regardless. So
yeah, that's probably what it was.
Because there are a lot of jokes in here that are very, like, again, kind of Easter eggy, where if you know the joke, then you're gonna laugh.
Yeah.
If you don't, you're just gonna go like, oh well,
Yeah.
Weird joke, but moving on.
There's probably a lot like that I didn't get, and if you didn't get it, we're completely missing.
Oh, I'm sure that there's a lot I didn't get, like, just because you're young at that point or around at all. So
yeah. But then in the sewer, he sees a guy who has frozen to death across the room, and it's the guy that he met at the homeless shelter earlier. And at this point, this is one of those scenes where I was like, I couldn't tell what was real and what was not real, because even though, like with the Ghost of Christmas Present, even though you're seeing the present, it's still sort of the future because it happens before Christmas and everything that he sees will be happening the next day.
Right.
So I didn't know if this was something that actually had happened, like this guy froze to death, or if this was something that he could change. Later I got my answer, but this is one of those things where I was confused at the time as to what was real and what was not.
Yeah, present time is kind of a relative term.
Yeah. So there's a door in the sewer, like up some stairs, and he ends up breaking through it, and he winds up in the room where the filming is taking place. And again, I'm wondering, is there a door in that room in the stage that leads to the sewer, or is this more Christmas magic?
I would assume, I took it as Christmas magic, like it's showing you that one last thing of, what happens in that sewer. Like, I have thoughts on for later, but yeah, it was one of those things where it's like, I'm pretty sure that was still part of the Christmas magic.
Okay. But yeah, he causes more mayhem here. He crushes the already crushed sensor again.
Yep.
And he's acting so insane that the John Glover characters basically makes Grace take him away, get him to his office. And then they try to take an elevator where the actor in costume as the Ghost of Christmas Present for the Scrooge special is getting off. But he's like freaking out thinking that it's there for him.
You mean the Ghost of Christmas Future?
Future, yes. The one that looks like death.
Yep.
That was pretty hilarious.
Agreed. He his scream was like when in Home Alone when Marv like touches the battery cable with the faucet and he just goes
Yeah, I know what you're talking about.
It is totally that. Like the combination of the two, it's like, yeah, it's pretty much the same scream.
So he goes back to his office. He makes himself a really horrible looking drink, which I think was one that Grace had made him before, but he did not do it the same. He was using Tab, which was an 80s drink.
Yep.
Which I don't know if I've ever had. I know they brought it back when I was a teenager, and I don't remember if I ever tried it, but I remember people saying it was awful.
It was sort of there's actually kind of a little, at least from what I saw, kind of a running joke with that whole drink being made, because it is made throughout the movie.
Yeah.
And it starts off with,
I wonder if it was product placement.
To some extent, but I took it more as because it started out as, a reasonably mixed drink, like it was say 50-50. And Tab was like a diet soda. It wasn't like Diet Coke or Pepsi, but it was in that realm. Like that was what you drank if you wanted to drink pop but lose weight.
Okay.
So that was kind of its go-to thing. But as the movie went along, by the time he got to the end, he was like, 9/10 vodka and just enough Tab to change the color from clear to just a little bit brown.
Okay. Maybe that was on purpose then. I just thought he was just doing a really bad job at making his drink.
He was, but it was done as he's slowly losing his mind and he's trying to get drunk quicker, or he can't keep his ratios right because he's so out of his mind.
Yeah, that's kind of what I was thinking, because it was just like the tiniest trickle.
Yep, exactly. And that's why that happens. It's kind of a progression, I guess.
But yeah, he makes his drink and then he opens the present from his brother. And it's a picture frame that his brother had made of themselves as children. And then you also get a scene of his boss watching the special as it's airing. And he's just like, he's so happy with the dormice. He's like, I knew this was a good idea.
and the place is filled with cats. Like there's so many cats in his house. It's great.
Hilarious. That was great. I loved it. And then I really liked the beginning of the scene, and I wish it would have gone on, even though I do like how it changed. But you have Frank watching the special as it's airing too, and you have this wall of TVs behind him that previously they played all different things. But this time, it's like different camera angles, I believe, from the special happening.
Exactly.
And then the Ghost of Christmas Future is in the corner, and he like turns and he looks directly at Frank, and then he's like slowly filling up all of the TVs, and then he's reaching out. I was like, this is like one of the best creepy versions of this scene. Like I want this to happen for real in another version where there's like a giant Ghost of Christmas Future reaching out and grabbing Scrooge. That would be amazing.
Oh, it was so creepy. Like it genuinely was. Like I remember watching it as a kid and being terrified by that.
Oh, that would be so great if it actually could happen.
Oh yeah. And the way they do going forward with the Ghost of Christmas Future, the way that they play him out those first couple scenes is amazing.
There's some things that I was not expecting with that I was, it's like simultaneously really creepy but like really well done.
Oh yeah. 100% agreed.
But he doesn't get grabbed. He gets interrupted by Loudermilk coming in with a shotgun. He wants revenge for him ruining his life because he's ranting about how he was fired and then his wife left him, and then I couldn't tell quite what he said. He said either she took our little baby daughter or our little baby dog. And if he said dog, that's hilarious. It's more sad if he said daughter, but if he said dog, that's hilarious.
My guess is daughter, but who the hell knows?
Probably, but I love the idea of him saying she took our little baby dog.
We'll say dog just to make you happy.
And he ends up almost getting shot, but then he falls into the elevator because it opens at the last second, and he winds up going down with the ghost, who this time he now is assuming is the one from his special, but it's not. And even after he reveals that it's not, he's still not convinced, because the ghost opens his robe and you see like his bones, and there's like tortured souls inside his rib cage, which
it's very Muppet-esque.
Kind of, but they're like Uncanny Valley. Like you can tell they're not people. They're like rubber masks, but they're so well done that it's so close that you almost can't tell.
True.
It's like it was really well done and really creepy. And then he just nonchalantly says, "Did our people do that? We're going to get a phone call."
Well, and he looks twice. He looks once, and then it shuts, and then he thinks about it, and then he looks again. Like, it's such a great moment of comedy and terror at the same time with that.
But then I also liked how the ghost's face would change like a television.
Yep.
To reveal like other weird faces and creepy faces.
Oh yeah.
And then it was really well done. It was different than any other Ghost of Christmas Future that I've seen, and I really liked it.
Of the three ghosts, I think that one is the most well realized.
Probably. My favorite is Present, just because I love how hilarious and cute and violent she is.
Oh yeah.
But as far as like costume design and creepy factor, Future wins by a mile.
Oh yeah, yeah. And all three ghosts, I think, were relatively strong. Even Lou Hayward was pretty good. Like all of the ghosts were excellent. Like they were probably some of the strongest stuff in this movie.
Yeah. But then the elevator starts going a million miles an hour, and it opens, and he finds himself in some kind of room with hallways, and he ends up at like a padded room, and Grace is there visiting her son, who I guess grew up and went crazy. I'm not sure exactly what happened.
They don't really say.
Explained.
Yeah, and I'm not sure. I don't know if the silence, like if he was, made fun of so much where it drove him to that or what. But yeah, it's left very vague. And I mean, everything about her kid is left very vague.
Yeah.
Just in the terms of that. So.
But another thing I didn't really understand is why she was dressed like Mary, like Jesus's mother. Or is that what she was supposed to be? Because she was wearing something that looked like super old fashioned, like a gown with a hood, and
And the future, the
confused.
whole everything about the future was very dramatic and very like you look at Claire in the future and she's got the very heavy makeup and the scene is all black and white. So I think they were going for super abstract.
Yeah, because every scene was very striking in some way.
Yeah, and I think that's
Yeah.
probably what like not that the scenes for the future of normal Scrooge is aren't, dramatic, but I think they were really aiming to knock him over the head to say, okay, this is your last chance to see what the future holds if you continue on this path.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that was probably like it because everything else about Frank had to be dramatic. Like you look at the promo for Christmas Carol that he put together.
Yeah.
It was over the top. It was very dramatic and very, all of those things. I think that the only way to get through to him was to do something like that in a very, very striking way.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, because we go into Claire next, and it's very striking. She and some other ladies are all dressed in black and white. They're like rich socialites now. It's so much so I didn't even recognize her.
Yeah.
Like I didn't know that was Claire until one of them called her by name. And you see a bunch of poor children outside, and Claire is refusing to help. And she cites a line that Frank had used earlier about she needs to save herself and no one else. I thought it was interesting that this is kind of a weird connection to make to another version of A Christmas Carol, which is Barbie's Christmas Carol. Because even though it's not the same character, in the Barbie Christmas Carol, the Cratchit character ends up becoming like Scrooge in future.
Oh,
this is the Belle character, not the Cratchit character. But I thought it was interesting that they took that route and made another character end up becoming Scrooge or Scrooge-like in the future.
Well, and it goes to show that, what you do does influence people.
Yeah.
I also liked, and I know like they were trying to show some age range on this. Like it never says how far it is in the future. But as compared to like, giving her like aging her up, they just kind of like put on the white makeup and the, kind of made everything very sharp and angular. I like the fact that they did that to kind of show the progression of time. I thought that was smart.
They also made, like, I guess adding to the striking factor, everything looked semi-futuristic. It's mostly notable in the scene where he sees his casket, which he first mistakes for his brother's casket because he sees, I think he calls her Wendy. So Wendy Malick is playing a character named Wendy.
Mm-hmm. And that's his wife, yeah.
Yeah, he thinks that she's there for his brother's funeral, but then his brother walks in, and then he's freaking out, wondering who's in the casket. And this room that they're in it's like empty. It's like a spaceship almost. It's so weird, and I liked it. But there's like a wall that has an opening that's full of fire because I guess he's going to be cremated. And then he's freaking out, and suddenly he's somehow inside the casket, and he's screaming he doesn't want to die, and he's burning alive. And then suddenly he's back in the elevator, and he's screaming for joy that he's alive, but he's back where he started with Loudermilk there with a shotgun saying not for long. But then he turns it around and he like grabs him and he's kissing him and telling him that he's hiring him back at twice his normal salary. And then he just has to help him do a whole bunch of illegal stuff. So I don't know how they're going to get out of this because that's never explained.
No.
They basically hijack the station after this. Like using the shotgun. So super illegal.
I will also add that Frank kind of turns things on Loudermilk. Like he kind of takes on just that absolutely crazy role. Like He kind of pulls what the Ghost of Christmas Present did. Like, he just beats the crap out of poor Loudermilk.
Yeah, I guess so. I never really thought of it that way, but yeah. I mean, a lot of versions will have Scrooge basically go crazy the second he reforms. So I just thought that they were taking this and ramping that up.
Oh, totally the case.
You are correct that Loudermilk got some more abuse during the scene. Even though he was getting twice his normal salary, he also had to take some abuse to get there.
Very true.
So yeah, they hijack the station. The John Glover character is eventually tied up and left with the censor character, which apparently is thrilling for her for some reason.
I don't know. I got nothing on that one.
Yeah, I don't know.
Happy Christmas. Maybe there was some mistletoe that was just out of scene.
I think there was mistletoe there. I think that was part of it. But there was not really any indication that they were an item before that. So
they totally weren't. She was taking advantage of a situation.
Yeah.
Which, given everything that had happened to her to that point, I don't know. I'm guessing they were trying to like say, oh, well, we beat the crap out of this poor lady, but we're going to let her get her, kiss on at the end or something. I don't know.
Yeah, I don't know.
I got really no idea. Yeah. Well, the character, the John Glover character had some reason for being there, but the level to which they took him, it was overplayed, really.
Mm-hmm. But yeah, they interrupt the whole entire program. He takes over, starts apologizing to people, but he's also kind of insulting people, and he's ranting and raving, and it's weird because it's sort of like he's changed for the better, but it's also sort of like he hasn't changed at all.
Agreed.
Which I kind of liked because it feels more realistic given how over the top terrible he was. To have him suddenly be a really sweet, nice, giving, loving character, fully reformed in just one night, that was too much. That would be too much to believe from this particular version of Scrooge, for me anyway.
Oh, agreed. No, I agree. And I think you take him back to what he was, earlier on in his career, he did still have some of those attributes. And we've seen him, like with the Humanitarian Award, you saw him be, that sugary, sweet, oh, I do so much for humanity kind of a guy. Mm-hmm. So I do agree with you. I hadn't thought about that point before, but you're right. Totally right on that. So one other thing too, like with the VHS player that his brother has, and this is a really random little point, but I thought it was kind of cool. They're watching Frank Cross on TV kind of talking about like how he brings out the picture of his brother. And he's like, oh, look at this picture. Mm-hmm. And I think his brother's wife says, oh, hey, honey, you should be recording this. And he's like, well, I got a VCR. I should be, or something like that. So,
yeah,
I don't know. I thought that was kind of a fun little playback or a little callback.
He also, in this whole thing, says that he sent him a towel, and he said the VCR was from Grace.
Ah, cool.
And at one point, he ends up making out with some random lady who was part of this dance team that I have no idea why they had this dance team in what was supposed to be like a straight up Dickens adaptation.
Sex appeal. I guarantee you sex appeal.
Well, it was like a hip hop dancer. Like there was a guy like doing like hip hop coaching or something. I don't know. It was very random, but I don't remember why he's making out with her specifically, but
probably because she comes by and he's just like, being Bill Murray.
Probably. But then he's like talking to the camera saying that he wishes it were Claire, and he's talking about her, and she's watching on TV also, and she ends up running out of the building while all her coworkers are like cheering her on, and she hails a taxi to get there, and the Ghost of Christmas Past is the one who picks her up. And then
because of course
he continues ranting. Like this goes on for quite a while.
It does. It goes on for way too long.
Yeah, it's ridiculous that no one stops him because he's taken over the airwaves. Like, literally, they have a shotgun. There should be police involved. But
there should be.
He's ranting about how Christmas Eve is a miracle and everybody needs to have this miracle, and he sounds completely unhinged. But for some reason, everybody watching seems like they're so touched by it, which I don't really understand. He's like literally gone crazy.
Yeah.
But then,
I'll just put it this way: Scrooge did it better.
Oh, there's a lot that did better.
True.
I'm not saying that because I dislike this movie. There's a lot I do like about this movie, but there's this whole end scene is just like so.
Yeah, it is definitely the weakest part. Like, of all the stuff, both good and bad, this whole bit is by and large the weakest segment. And for all of the professionals that worked on this, it should have been something that was a red light of, okay, we need to trim this.
Yeah. The one part that I really did like about the end, though, was after he's done with all of his ranting, Grace's son comes up and is looking up at him like he's expecting something. And he's like asking, did I forget anything? And he's nodding, and then he whispers Tiny Tim's line, God bless us everyone, which he'd heard the Mary Lou Retton version of the character say earlier.
Aw.
And
yay.
That kind of got me because this kid is adorable.
Oh yeah,
and
he is just the most like just the yeah.
And
you get diabetes from how cute he is.
Yeah, and Grace is like overjoyed that he actually spoke some real words. And then Claire shows up. She apparently was not whisked away to the past by the Ghost of Christmas Past.
Well, that was nice of him.
And he introduces her to the camera. And then Grace starts singing Put a Little Love in Your Heart. I think that's what the song is called.
Yep.
And I never thought about it before, but at least lyrics-wise, that's kind of a perfect Christmas song.
It really is.
I'm surprised nobody has like turned it into one, like with like soft bells in the background or whatever.
Oh, that would have been really cool.
It would be a perfect Christmas song if somebody wanted to make it one.
No, I would agree.
But then the whole studio starts singing along, and then all the ghosts show up, including the guy who had frozen to death. So it wasn't fake. He actually was there, and the guy was actually dead. And it looks like he's being escorted to heaven by the fairy because he's like dressed like her, complete with the crinkly cellophane wings.
I suppose it's the best way to go, but that whole bit felt tacked on. Like the fact that, because you keep expecting, because I had completely forgotten about that part until I went back and watched it, for this.
Mm-hmm.
And the fact that he wasn't, not that you can save everybody, but the fact that he wasn't in some way, shape, or form saved, I don't know. It didn't add anything to the thing. There wasn't any great attraction, or reason for that character. It wasn't like that was a redeeming moment for Frank Cross by any stretch.
No, they probably just thought it'd be funny to put him in a cellophane fairy costume.
There you go. And maybe it was one of those things like it's supposed to because they kind of threw everything at the wall to get Frank Cross to be like, hey, you're doing bad things, change your ways.
Uh-huh.
I don't know. Maybe that was the point, but
maybe.
Yeah.
But the one last detail that I kind of loved was that with all the ghosts are all starting to sing too. Even the like trapped souls inside the Ghost of Christmas Future.
And they're trying to make everybody up in the booth sing louder too.
For all the things that I did not like about the end, the very last part of it I did like because it just got really weird and hilarious.
Oh yeah. What did you think of the camera kind of zooms in on Bill Murray and he says, "Feed me, Seymour"?
I didn't understand it, but I loved it. Like, what?
Exactly. Well, then that being that Bill Murray was in that movie,
that's why they did it, but I was like, what did that have to do with this movie?
Absolutely nothing.
Yeah, it was a nice callback to our podcast, I guess, but as far as this movie goes, it didn't really make sense for it to be there.
Absolutely not. I was just looking when that came out. Okay, so Little Shop came out in 86. This came out in 88.
Okay.
So
yeah.
So it was kind of like he did a couple other things. He did an unaccredited role in '88 as well, but that was really the last thing that he did was the thing in Little Shop. So I'm sure that's probably why that was there. And being that this was recorded, well, this was started being filmed at the end of '87, but even then you've got 2 years between Little Shop and Scrooged.
Mm-hmm.
But I thought that you would get a kick out of the fact that that was in there. So
yeah, it was a weird surprise. So yeah, that's Scrooged. Like I said,
So-
I have mixed feelings. I liked a lot of it, but a lot of it was like kind of, it didn't feel Christmassy. It was like kind of mean spirited.
yeah.
And not that, I mean, Scrooge is a mean spirited character, but it didn't feel like his transformation was sincere enough to give you the feels. I don't know.
No, I agree. I think too, just the nature of this one, because it was, I mean, it was a very cynical movie, like looking
Yeah.
at kind of like the notion of, big broadcasters and, kind of that heartfelt stuff. But I think to some extent, that era, and not that you didn't have, warm fuzzies then, but I think that they were aiming to make something that was kind of in that realm.
Probably.
It was still, even though he's reformed, he's still the same guy. And not that it was even remotely realistic, but I think too that played into it. So
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think that this was a decent movie and a good twist on the story. I don't know how much I would return to this one for rewatches. I would probably rewatch scenes of it because there's some good scenes in here. But as far as sitting down and watching the whole thing straight through beginning to end, I don't feel like I would do that just by myself. Maybe if somebody else wanted to watch it, I'd be okay with that. But
I could see that.
it doesn't feel like one that I personally would want to own and rewatch.
I get you. I think that is the most even way to look at this movie. Like I kind of feel have watched this several times, but it's for those specific scenes. It's seeing, I guess, that nostalgia of like that '80s kind of like the way that goes, like the stuff at the open with the trailers, and seeing like the way that the ghosts are set up. Like there are the things that are good about this movie are very good, but the rest is kind of But I guess I try to look past a lot of the stuff, because I do enjoy like all of the ghosts. I just love. I think they're so cool.
Yeah, they did have some good ghosts in this, even the ones that were gross.
Yeah, exactly.
They were good in the way that they were very well done.
Mm-hmm.
Like I'm not a zombie fan, but like that thing was really well done. Really gross.
Yeah, they did a great job with that, and it made an impression. Like if he would have, and not that you would have had him come in Jacob Marley style, with chains and the money boxes and stuff, but they did a really good job interpreting that for an '80s audience.
Yeah, I really liked how they had him like dragging the golf club set behind him instead of like money boxes and chains.
Mm-hmm. And of course, golf ball and mouse in the back of his head was a nice touch too.
Yes.
And even when he took off the glasses and no eyes, like that was a creepy detail.
Yeah, like I said, it was really gross, but really well done. Well, I suppose that's all I've got to say about Scrooged. Do you have any last thoughts?
Not really. I guess, if you have run into a cab with an extreme amount of Christmas decor and lots of smoke building up around it, do not get inside cab, because you'll probably go on a ride that you won't return from.
That's always good advice.
Yeah, I find that it's helped me a couple of times over the course of my life.
Okay, well, I think that's going to be all for this episode. Do you want to let people know where they can find you in the future?
Absolutely. You can find me on YouTube at Trivial Theater. You can also find me on Twitter at trivia_chick.
Okay, I will have those linked below, and we will probably see you again, probably next year. I think this is going to be our last one for this year, but
I don't blame you there.
We have some ideas for the future, so...
Well, and what a thing to end on for 2021.
Yes. Okay, well, I guess we will see you next year.
Until then, Jonathan, it's always a pleasure.
Merry Christmas and Happy Life Day.
Yes, yes.
Thanks for listening to this special Christmas episode of the podcast. If you like what you've heard, then don't forget to subscribe on whatever platform you prefer, and of course make sure to follow my co-hosts as well. Any relevant links will be in the description for easy access, and we'll see you soon for another brand new episode of the show. Thanks for listening, and Merry Christmas!